right, guys, we are back. This is the Shillan and Duffy Show on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and the SureDog Radio Network. I am your host. My name is Keith Shillan. I am a writer for SureDog.com. I'm also the executive producer of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. For the show, I am joined, as always, by the senior editor of SureDog.com, the great Benjamin Duffy. Ben, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I am doing really well. What a card.
Yeah, you know what? We hadn't. So I'm gonna pull back the curtain. We're recapping UFC Moraes versus Sandhagen that went down at Fight Island last night. A lot of times we are able to tape it right after the event. Unfortunately, due to things in my life, I was unable to do it right after the event, so I had to do it the next night. We have a lot of sports going on right now. As we speak, Sunday Night Football is playing. We had a major injury in the NFL today. I don't know if you saw it. Dak Prescott looks like he broke his ankle. LeBron James is probably going to win his, I think, 4th NBA champion. I'm not sure, maybe 5th. I'm not a big NBA guy. All these things that are going on in the weekend of sports, there is something. I'm not going to give away, but there's something that happened on this card that it probably won't top the highlight of Dak Prescott when people are going to want to rewatch the break. But that's probably the only thing this weekend that's going to top the clicks. I don't think LeBron James winning a championship is going to get more clicks than something we saw, which I don't want to give away yet, in case someone is living under a rock. Do you agree or disagree with me?
I'll never underestimate kind of mainstream sports media's ability to bury or denigrate MMA highlights. So I'm not sure. Okay. I'll never forget when, the Anthony Pettis Showtime kick happened, and I think it was the third from the top highlight on SportsCenter that night.
Yeah.
And the top one was just another slam dunk.
Yeah, you're probably. I didn't watch SportsCenter's top 10, but yeah, you're probably right. It was probably keeping it 9th. But in all fairness, UFC has a deal with ESPN, obviously getting a lot more coverage than it did back in the WEC days. But I think you made a good point. Plus, we all know that I like to live in the moment. I can over-exaggerate at times, which I'm sure I'll do later on. But let's get in this card. It was an absolute banger of a card. I think we both could probably give really good high grades. In the main event, we had former title challenger, former World Series of Fighting champion Marlon Moraes taking on Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen had an incredibly impressive performance, getting a second-round TKO by spinning wheel kick knockout, which is absolutely incredible. This kick, end of the night, it in most cases would be a candidate for knockout of the year, and it's not even the best knockout of this card. No one's even talking about it. But talk about Corey Sandhagen. I'm going to talk about Corey Sandhagen. I was very impressed with him. But talk about his performance tonight.
Oh, sensational. Not just the finish, but really just fought a perfect fight against Marlon Moraes from start to finish. And obviously the finish was 1 minute and 3 seconds into round 2. So, a clean 6 minutes of work. The thought going in, at least to me, into a lot of the analyses I looked at, was that, Moraes was a danger to Sandhagen early. Fantastic knockout power, really aggressive guy, fast starter. Sandhagen is not a fast starter generally. And the thought was that either Moraes is going to just lamp him early, or, Sandhagen might have a better chance. The longer it goes, he might, win late or just, bank away the last 3 or 4 rounds or whatever. But from the get-go, just what a striking performance by Corey Sandhagen. Establishing his low-kicking game, I really liked that. So that once he started going upstairs, well, obviously, that's how he finished it. But, that was not the first high kick he landed in that second round. He must have made a conscious decision. His coaches must have worked with him and said, this is what we're going to do. But yeah, incredibly impressed. Even as one of only 2 people from the entire SureDog staff that picked Sandhagen in this fight, this is not how I picked it to look.
Yeah, I had a friend text me before, ask me a prediction, especially about the main event, and I was like, well, I'm staying away from it. It's such a tough fight to pick. I was about 50-50 on the fence, but I said exactly what you said. I said, Moraes early, Sandhagen gets a better chance. It goes deeper. Now, I picked Moraes by first-round knockout. Now, if you told me ahead of time that there'd be an early highlight reel spectacular knockout, I would say, oh, wow, Moraes caught him with something. Moraes, and then if you told me it was some kind of high kick, I would have said, oh, Sandhagen was doing his big dip into the side, and he leaned right into a high kick. That's what I would have guessed. That's not what happened. This was a sensational performance. Sandhagen is a guy that he's been ranked in the top 10 for a little bit now. He's a guy that a lot of people, very high on. There's a lot of people who think he's going to hold the title one day. But he took a step up in his performance. Like, he showed, crazy improvements. What most impressed me about his win over Moraes is this is coming off a terrible performance against Aljamain Sterling. Yes. His first loss in the UFC, his first, he beat John Lineker, he beat Rafael Sunsao. He had good wins, so I don't want to say his big step up, but to that next level, those elite guys, those guys that we could see winning a title, like an Aljamain Sterling, like a Marlon Moraes. That was his first that level, and he just got steamrolled, and he looked overlooked, and right away, so many people started writing him off. I actually didn't even like the matchup against Moraes because I said, man, you got this young promising kid. If he gets another loss, which I expected it to happen, now everyone's jumping off the train. Nobody believes him anymore. Instead, he puts on a performance lifetime. What really stood out to me was, actually, let me back up a little bit. Let's talk about Moraes for a second. I thought his performance was, obviously it was not good. He lost by second round knockout, but I thought he had a terrible strategy. He kept loading up on everything. He was trying to end the fight with one punch. Now, that is a Marlon Moraes style. Like, he's got so many beautiful knockouts. But this is the first time he faced someone that was so elusive, someone who kind of wins by making his opponent, miss, that sets up his own striking. I thought Moraes should have held back a little bit. I think he should have still pressed the action, came forward, but not throw at 100%. Maybe throw at 60, 70%. What do you think went wrong for Moraes?
I mean, you would have a better handle on that kind of thing than I would, but I could definitely see that he was loading up on everything, which he doesn't really need to. He has more natural power in his strikes than all but about 3 or 4 bantamweights ever. Like, he's one of the hardest hitting bantamweights of all time without just, like, winging every shot, with his like hottest fastball.
Yeah, they going early in the night. They were talking about Giga Chikadze in his fight. Mm-hmm. They kept talking about that he was loading up and he was trying to get a knockout, and it's something that you can't chase the knockout. You just got to land, and it happens. And we saw that, and we'll get to that later on. We saw guys who just kind of landed a shot, and it puts guys out. And I think that's what kind of happened with Rice. What I loved about Corey Sandhagen was, like, so many things, but the thing that stood out to me most is that he had Moraes guessing because he had so much variety in his attacks. Like, he'd be coming at him, and at one point, he's switching stances. Then he goes to southpaw, he's jabbing. Then he comes up with a power hook, follows that up with a kick to the body. Then you pointed out, kicks to the legs, then back to a switch stance, then the high kick, then he might clinch him for a second, then he might look like he's going for a takedown. Like, he just kept adding, like, so many things, and that was so great. Now, Corey Sandhagen always gets compared to Dominic Cruz, and I think that's always going to be the case, and I think it's a lazy comparison. What I mean by that is, yeah, they do a lot of movement, but Sandhagen, I don't think he has the footwork in the sense of getting guys to miss so much as Dominic Cruz does, but he uses his footwork to set up his own offense, and I think he has more offensive tools than Dominic Cruz ever had. Let me back up. Offensive tools in the standing department. Now, Dominic Cruz, one thing is so much about his game was his ability to throw in a takedown, which Sandhagen has, he's got some takedown skills, but not to like Dominic Cruz level. But I mean, straightly striking, I feel like I am so much more impressed with Corey Sandhagen's striking than Dominic Cruz ever impressed me. Agree or disagree?
Agree. And you can tell because Cruz was never really a knockout artist or a finisher on the feet, even when he was like in his absolute prime. You're right in that his footwork was really more designed to save him from danger, which makes sense because the guy started fighting when there was no bantamweight division and there was barely a featherweight division. I mean, I think 3 of his first 4 fights were at lightweight, and he was just a puny lightweight. So he'll be the first to tell you, I developed this style to keep from getting lamped by much bigger guys. But it also led to a lot of him throwing shots without his feet really under him. He's definitely a pity pat striker.
Absolutely. He'd lose a lot of power. The other thing that Cruz was really good at was landing a strike, getting his opponent to kind of press at him, and then there was your reactionary double, or he used to do that knee tap.
Great knee tap, yeah.
Yeah. So you don't see that with Sandhagen, but the thing I love that you pointed out is that he would hit Cruz would land without really being in a good position to land a power shot. That's not the case with Sandhagen. He's in those positions. And I love that. He was really building as the fight came, and it was building fast. It wasn't a slow build, but he just started. And what I think what happened is his confidence. Every time he started landing and he was making Moraes move, like he finally it just switched. Like, I got this guy. Like, he can't hit me. I'm out hitting him. He's struggling with my length. He's struggling with my variety. And then his confidence went through the roof. Not a cockiness, but just I can turn it up even more. And then he did. And then he started talking to him, saying he's got a broken orbital bone, which I don't know if that's true or not, but he started the mind game, and then came that spinning wheel kick. Absolutely fantastic performance.
It is funny that you mentioned Dominic Cruz, because really the whole feeling of that, and you're right, where his confidence just took off, reminded me of Garbrandt versus Cruz.
Oh, yeah, the reverse.
Garbrandt pretty early on realized that he was a step ahead, and then he just started to flex, started to flow, started to talk, started to showboat. I mean, he had a lot more time to do it because the fight went the distance, but it felt like that. You could almost see the light bulb go on over Sandhagen's head.
Yeah, the other thing that stands out to me about Sandhagen is he's only 28, and he hasn't been in the UFC that long. He might just be reaching his prime years. I keep talking about this was his best performance, but this might not be his best performance coming up. There might be better ones. He was a guy that I was like, yeah, I could see it. Maybe he wins a title, but probably not. After this performance, what he did to Marlon Moraes, which nobody does. I mean, you think about when Henry Cejudo beat him. Henry Cejudo had to weather the storm. It was the complete opposite. This one, now I'm feeling like, wow, Corey Sandhagen, like I said, I know I live in the moment. I'm like, damn, if I had to pick right now who wins between Corey Sandhagen and Prichon, I'm feeling pretty good about taking Corey Sandhagen right now.
I would love to see it. The only thing that would stop me from just jumping right in and being in the moment with you would be wondering whether we will look back on this as the start of Moraes' decline. Because, I mean, he's a 30-fight veteran. He's 32 years old in a division that is not especially kind to elder statesmen. And he is a guy that depends on his natural gifts, his fast twitch reflexes, his agility. But I don't think that's the case. He still looked like Marlon Moraes out there. And he's, less than a year removed from looking like Marlon Moraes when he fought Jose Aldo. I think this was just a fantastic performance by Sandhagen and definitely a level up moment.
Yeah, you made a really good point. Moraes has that feeling when his floor falls, it's going to fall fast because of his style. If you're one of these guys who depends so much on speed, explosion, power, all you got to do is lose one step, and then you're so far behind. Let's get into some matchmaking. Corey Sandhagen said afterwards that he wants a title shot. He understands that Aljamain Sterling is the first guy in line. I think he said Frankie Edgar and TJ Dillashaw may be ahead of him. I totally disagree with Frankie Edgar, but with the UFC, they always want, we saw with Jose Aldo, they're willing to put the old stars, former champions in there. I like the idea of TJ Dillashaw's return being Corey Sandhagen as a title limiter. If the UFC wants to give TJ Dillashaw an automatic title shot, I'm okay with that. Just because he's the former champion, he had some title defenses, impressive title defense. I'm okay with that. But if they do it, they want him to earn a win, number one contender matchup against Corey Sandhagen with, almost like a tournament with, assuming Aljamain Sterling actually gets the long overdue title shot. What would you do with Sandhagen?
I completely agree. I like him as a return opponent for Dillashaw. The timing basically lines up. Dillashaw will be back in mid-January. So we're talking, 3 months down the road. Announce it so that Dillashaw has someone to prepare for, so that Sandhagen has someone to prepare for, and so that they can kind of start jawing at each other. Sandhagen is a super nice guy, but he doesn't lack for confidence, and Dillashaw is kind of an asshole, and I expect, like you're a guy who kind of likes the drama leading up to a fight. I think that would be a low key kind of amusing build up.
I totally agree with it. And it's funny because when I think about the top guys, I think about the four guys I just said. Match them up anyway. I mean, we already saw Sterling run through them, but it would be such a fun stylistic matchup. And one thing that really stood out to me is the fact that we have compared Corey Sandhagen to Dominick Cruz. And remember I was there live in attendance in Boston. The absolute fantastic matchup between TJ Dillashaw and Dominick Cruz that went down in Boston, which I actually scored for TJ Dillashaw, though Dominick Cruz won. If we could get that again, that would be fantastic. Let's move over to Marlon Moraes. You already said that you still think, he's still a top guy. You think I agree with you. Like I think it was a terrible strategy. It might be just a tough stylistic matchup for him. Who do you think the former title challenger should fight?
I'm kind of stuck, man. I mean, he's fought a good number of the people below him in the rankings. Like the names that are popping out to me in a lot of cases are rematches, which I'd rather not have to do to him. But, maybe he could take on someone like Pedro Munoz.
Yeah. That was the name I was thinking of. When I think of Marlon Moraes, I feel he's lost 2 out of 3, counting the Henry Cejudo loss, now this loss. The one win he had was Jose Aldo, a fight that a lot of people thought he lost. Now, I think both me and you went on and we both scored it from Marlon Moraes. Am I correct?
Yeah, I thought Moraes won that one, but I wasn't mad either way. That was super close.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel. His stock is down. I'm sure we'll get to that in the Bulls and the Bears. I feel like he needs a rebound fight, but because of his name value, he's been in many main events, you got to reward someone with Marlon Moraes. And I think a guy that has been a company man, he's been on a winning streak, he's does some fantastic things, kind of deserves a big name. I think is Marlon Vera. That's a fight that I think would be really fun stylistically. See where Vera is. See if Moraes can't get back Vera, then maybe he is no longer a top guy anymore.
That's a great point. I was going to say, if Marlon Moraes is not diminished, he knocks out Vera. But that's fine. Vera's earned the chance, and the reason you fight the fights is because we're wrong a lot of the time. So I'd love to see it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, I agree. My first instinct is Marlon Moraes wins that fight. But same thing. Like, I pick fights wrong all the time. So let's go into the co-main event. The other name that kind of jumps off the page is Edson Barbosa. He took on Makwan Americani. Barbosa won by decision. This is a fight that Makwan Americani was calling for a long time, and he did not have a good showing. This was booked as a striker versus grappler. That's what most people thought. If he stays on the feet, Barbosa's going to win. If he gets to the ground, or at least that's Makwan Americani's best chance is get it to the ground. There was very little ground fighting. I know Makwan did get a couple takedowns where it was like very end of the round or couldn't hold Barbosa down. I did not like Makwan Americani's strategy in this fight. I picked Barbosa. It was one of the fights that I was very confident in. And my confidence would have grew even more if you told me this strategy Americani was going to take, which was stand back, try to catch a kick. Like, that's not how you beat Edson Barbosa. Barbosa is obviously going to be a tough test. He's as violent of a fighter as we've ever had in the UFC, as scary of a fighter as we've ever had in the UFC. But the way, the blueprint's out there. The people who have beat him kind of use all the same strategy, and that is put on an insane pace, crowd the kicker, make him fight off his back foot, and beat him with pressure. Khabib Nurmagomedov was basically running in at him. Kevin Lee followed a very similar strategy. That's what Makwan Amirkhani needed to do. That's not what happened. For a big portion of the fight, we had a staring contest with both guys throwing feints, and I understand what they were doing. Barbosa was throwing feints, trying to draw out the takedown attempts to react, while Makwan Amirkhani was throwing feints, trying to catch a kick, like get Barbosa to respond with a kick and maybe he can catch it. He was unable to catch the kick and was picked apart by Barbosa. I really think him focusing on the leg kicks of Barbosa is what got him hurt on the feet with the hands, because he was dropped 2 or 3 times with punches because he's focusing so much on the legs, and there came straight punches right down the pipe. What did you take from this matchup?
Pretty much everything that you said right there. I favored Barbosa in this one as well. I don't know that Amirkhani would have won even if he had pursued a better strategy, but within the first half a round of this fight, I was like, oh, this isn't gonna work for him. Spending all day, in Barbosa's kicking range, that still doesn't work, even as diminished as Barbosa has been. That's like fighting a guy with a spear and saying, okay, I'm going to stay 6 feet away from him and try to grab the pointy end of the spear.
Yeah, no.
Like, I guess it might work, but you'd be much better off, getting 2 feet away from him as quickly as you can. I don't know. I know he was a replacement opponent, but it wasn't that short a notice.
Yeah. I think it was Sadiq Youssef was supposed to fight.
Yep. Which I still would have loved.
Yeah,
I would still love to see that fight. I'm glad Barbosa won, so that maybe we still get that fight. But the other problem with this is that because Amirkhani really didn't put Barbosa through his paces at all, I still don't know if Barbosa is back in any meaningful way,
sure.
And I still don't know whether I like Barbosa at 145 because he really didn't have to exert himself.
Yeah,
like neither his chin nor his gas tank were tested.
Yeah.
So,
you made a good point. So Barbosa, this is his first win in 4 fights. I mean, he ended a 3 fights losing streak. Before that, he lost 5 out of his last 6. His only win was the Dan Hooker fight, which was absolutely a spectacular performance.
It was kind of like this one.
Yeah, if we want to nitpick a little bit his record, his last 2 losses were split decision losses to Dan Ige and Pelfelder. I thought he won both those fights. Especially the Dan Ige fight. Like, I felt like that was fairly easy for Barbosa. That said, I like Barbosa at featherweight simply for the fact that he's pretty much faced everyone at lightweight. So I don't know if he will be more successful at featherweight, but to me it's like new matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you what your general thoughts with him at featherweight. I not performance-wise, because you can't really – it's hard to grade his performance, but are you more excited to see him facing featherweights like me, or do you not really care?
Well, my thing is I don't think Edson Barboza right now is going to be a title challenger in either division. So if he's not trying to plot a way back to a title – he might think he's trying to plot a way back to a title shot, but I don't think he is, and I don't think most people think he is. All I want out of him is – hey, man, give me more highlights. Separate the wheat from the chaff. Like, knock out people or embarrass people that don't know how to deal with your style and, let other people show out if they can. I still like him better at 155, but you make a good point that there are a lot more people at 145 that he has not fought yet. If he were, say, 5 years younger and just in a bad streak and, still realistically trying to be a title challenger again, I'd say stay at 155.
Yeah.
Here, let me give you a question real quick.
Okay.
Name me a fighter who dropped in weight after age 33 or so, and it was a good move. I can think of 2.
Okay. 2 guys who are I can't even think of the 2 you're talking about. Someone who dropped in. Well, Randy Couture. But he doesn't count. He doesn't. Randy just.
I was going to say Couture is one of them, but it doesn't count mostly because he was a smallish heavyweight.
Yeah, and he doesn't count because he's just a freak of nature. Like,
yeah.
This is a guy that was still I mean, he was winning championship late, in his 40s. And it was also a much different time, if we're being honest, than we're in right now. The other guy that dropped in weight, later in his career, I can't even think of who else you're talking about.
Frankie Edgar.
Oh, Frankie Edgar. Yeah, but
he was already 33 when he dropped to featherweight.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, you're right. And I still think he had more success at lightweight.
He did, but he had no route back to a title shot at lightweight, I don't think, after losing to Henderson twice. Whereas he got one at featherweight. In fact, he got 2 at featherweight.
Yeah, well, that might be the best bet for Barbosa. Like, if he's going to reach a title shot, it's going to be a featherweight. I'm with you. I don't think it happens. He mentioned afterwards, asked him, Dan Hardy was trying to get him to call somebody out. They asked him, who does he want to fight? He says he doesn't care. He wants to face a top 5 or 6 opponent. We'll round it, say top 10. I don't know if a win of a Makwan Amarikani makes you deserve a top 10 opponent, but I think about being Edson Barboza does, if that makes sense.
We've just been talking about Jose Aldo. The guy has been getting all kinds of things he doesn't deserve just because of who he is.
So let's matchmake for a second. I have 2 matches for Barboza. I have what I call is my dream matchup, and then I have one that makes more sense rankings-wise. My dream matchup would be Yair Rodriguez next, because how fun would that be? The wildness, the kicks, but why would Yair Rodriguez take this fight right now? You can make an argument Yair Rodriguez deserves the next title shot. So the one that I think makes a little bit more sense is Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar is going to make it fun. He's got his boxing style versus Barbosa's kicking style. Calvin Kattar has that high output that can break Barbosa, especially if he, the featherweight cut drains his gas tank. But also, we've seen going back to the Moicano fight that Calvin Kattar struggles with leg kicks, which is obviously Barbosa's bread and butter. Who would you, if you're in charge of matchmaking, who would you put Edson Barboza against next?
I like the one you threw out there. I liked Sherdog contributor Brian Knapp's idea of the winner of Arnold Allen and Jeremy Stevens. That would be one that's kind of competitively appropriate, and one that would be a bit of a step up for him, but would get him a name, would be the loser of Zombie versus Ortega.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I thought about that one. That would be fantastic. Yeah, I think it's one of these ones where we say, and I know we said this many times, featherweight, you can't make a bad matchup. Yeah, we did it with Calvin Kattar. But when we went Calvin Kattar, we just started going through the rankings and we went like one guy at a time and tell me which fight you're not interested in, and we couldn't name one. I kind of feel the same way. All right, let's move on. Before that, we had Ben Rothwell versus Marcin Tybura in a battle of 2 veteran heavyweights in a fight that was a little bit of a train wreck, but also pretty entertaining. Ben Rothwell is 38. He looks like he's 58.
Yep.
He's big, as we call him, Big Ben Rothwell, and he had an insane output. He had the numbers. He had over 138 strikes, I think, in the first round. It was in a very high pace, no matter what weight class you are, especially for heavyweight. But that's it with Ben Rothwell. He's unathletic. He's never, even in his prime, he wasn't really that athletic. Really, his technique is really gotten very ugly. No power at all. All his strikes are arm punches, which is why he can keep a high output, because there's no pop behind it. And he surprised Tybura early, because I don't think Tybura was expecting Ben Rothwell to come out with that blitzing pace. But because he kept blitzing the same way, without changing his rhythm, without changing his tells at all, suddenly Tybura, kind of same thing what we talked about with Sandhagen, I got you. He just started seeing these punches, just pulled away from him, came back with a counter, and Ben Rothwell somehow made Marcin Tybura look like a good kickboxer, which he is not.
He is not. And the thing is, Rothwell used to be a reasonably sound kickboxer for such kind of a big, like, oafish looking guy. You know, I thought he was actually a pretty decent technical kickboxer. I'm talking about like maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Sure.
But no, this was miserable. It was kind of fun to watch while it happened, but the thing is, he had huge output in the first round, but I don't know what he was trying to do. It didn't look like he was just trying to finish it in a heartbeat. He wasn't striking like that. You know, we've already talked about people who just overload every strike, you know, looking for the knockout. He was almost the opposite.
Yeah.
It was almost like he just had a Fitbit on, and, you know, he needed to, you know, meet his strikes for the day.
Yeah.
And then call it good. And even though he was, you know, kind of throwing arm punches, he was the more tired guy by the end of the fight. And the other thing about Rothwell used to be that for an enormous guy that has always had to cut weight to get to 265, he used to have a decent gas tank. He hasn't lost many fights because he gassed out. But this fight, you can argue that he lost because he was the more tired guy in the third round.
Yeah, I actually, even though I was not impressed with him, I gave him the first round just from the pure volume sense. But it was one of those where he was going down a hill fast and no one could stop him. You made a good joke about the Fitbit. His punches reminds me of when you go to boxing class and they do the like last 30 seconds burnout and you're doing bag drill and you're just like throwing the punches and it's just a cardio workout at that point. Like everyone knows it's a cardio workout. It's not a technique workout. It's not a power. You just you try punching the bag as many times you can in 30 seconds. That's similar to what we had here. And Ben Rothwell's going to struggle with anybody who's more athletic and quicker than him now. And that is almost everybody left in the division. Tybura is just younger than him and had more left in the gas tank, and that's shown. And I just don't want to see Ben Rothwell again. I want him to retire. I looked up how old he was, and I expected him to be older than 38. Like, I was surprised he was only 38.
I think he's been around for so long. You know, he's been a guy that just, you know, we knew about and was probably a borderline top 15 guy, like as early as like probably like 2003, you know, and it just was very late to get to the UFC.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was watching him knocking out, I think it was Devin Clark in the PFL. I mean,
wow.
I'm trying to think who it was. It was the final round. I was there in the audience. It was the team finals. It was a Milicic team versus
Devin Cole.
Who did I say?
Yeah. Devin Clark.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Devin. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like Devin. Yeah, even worse. They even more irrelevant. And I don't remember who's it. Was it the Renzo Gracie team? Maybe, or maybe it was Matt Lindland's team. I don't remember what team it was. They beat the finals. I think it was Matt. Actually, I think it was Matt Lindland's team. Yeah, that's how long ago Ben Rothwell has been. And honestly, you're talking. What was that? 2006. Oh, it was 2006. Actually,
the IFL died in 2007.
Wow.
Because, you know, they ran a few events that last year that were no longer the team format. They just, you know, said everything must go and just put together the best matchups they could for a while. But yeah, it was New Year's Eve 2006.
Okay, 2006. We're talking 14 years ago. And at that time, the fight I'm talking about, he already had 28 matchups. 14 years ago. Yeah, he had a good career. Never a title challenger. Never like the best heavyweight, but did enough that he will be remembered. And I really hope he calls it a career. But let's move on. Before that, we had Marcus Perez versus Dricus Duplessis. Duplessis' debut. To me, Duplessis won by first round knockout. To me, there's not a lot to take away from this. Perez came out very aggressive, kind of surprising Duplessis, who seemed very uncomfortable. The commentators really pointed that out. I think they did well. And then he just kind of relaxed because he's getting hit by Marcus Perez, and he's probably like, oh, this guy's actually not a good striker. He doesn't hit that hard. Kind of settled in, started implemented his own game and then knocked him out. We were talking about Marlon Moraes trying to chase the knockout. Duplessis wasn't trying to chase the knockout. He just threw, and it landed and knocked him out. I got nothing else to say. Like, what did you take from this?
I picked Perez, even though I don't really believe in him, just because I don't know it for a fact, but Dricus du Plessis might be the first fighter from South Africa to ever win in the UFC. They've not historically shown out very well, but no, he looked good. He was the perfect guy to kind of just take advantage of Perez's wildness and defensive porousness. The thing about someone as wild as Perez, du Plessis didn't really have to look for the knockout because a guy like that is going to just put himself out of position.
Yeah.
And your strike at normal 75% speed that is coming at an angle and the guy isn't, he isn't expecting it. He runs right into it. That's better than your hardest shot that somebody's there bracing for.
Yeah, I'm not too high on du Plessis. He's a decent prospect. I mean, he's a former KSW champion. He was actually down a weight class at welterweight, but he's a big guy. He's a true middleweight. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the South Africa thing. This is not Nigeria. They're not going to be, producing world champions anytime soon. That said, 3-4 years ago, we probably weren't saying the same thing about the Australia New Zealand area, which was changed. But I look at a guy best case scenario is ceiling is bottom of the top 15 middleweights, best case, like your Ian Heinisch level. Not much different style, but I mean that's just ceiling, and that's if everything kind of breaks right. And it also goes with being middleweight. It's probably the weakest, one of the weaker divisions. Do you like anything about this guy?
Again, I didn't even pick him to beat Marcus Perez, so I'm already pleasantly surprised. Yeah. All I'd say is, on a night that we've just finished talking about Corey Sandhagen, when he came over from LFA, I did not have him pegged as a future top 10 bantamweight, let alone a guy on the doorstep of a title shot. There are times for young fighters, and du Plessis is only 26, to just actually pick up new skills. Sandhagen, showed skills that he did not have 4 years ago. So anything's possible, but no, he doesn't have future contender written all over him for me.
Yeah, you mentioned something really big is that he's only 26. I mean, he's not even close to his prime. Also, being the South African, he's now the face of South African MMA. So maybe that helps him get. I don't know what his job situation is, but maybe he helps him become a full-time fighter if he's not already. And we've seen guys who become full-time fighters really grow and improve. Another fighter made his UFC debut right before that. Alan Badeau did not go well for him like it did du Plessis, as he was knocked out by Tom Aspinall. Aspinall is now 2-0 in the UFC. Looks like it's a really good addition to the UFC heavyweight division. It's been a really, really long time that a guy from England is relevant in the heavyweight division. I mean,
keep thinking.
Ian Freeman, and I don't know how relevant he was. Is there anybody else? I feel like there's got to be an obvious pick that I'm forgetting.
I mean, you want me to name James McSweeney, Neil Wayne? Those are the
James
two.
Thompson. I mean, he wasn't UFC, but
right, but Wayne,
is he already better than? Is he already
Wayne
better?
McSweeney and Thompson are probably the three most notable British heavyweights since Freeman. A lot of Freeman's best wins were at 205 anyway.
That's true. That's a good
point.
point.
We mostly remember him in the U.S. because of just that one magic night that he put away Frank Mir.
And he put away Frank Mir before Frank Mir was considered Frank Mir was a high rising prospect, but he wasn't.
Yeah. Mir was like 5-0 or something.
Yeah, Frank Mir came around, give or take, around the same time. Josh Barnett came in the UFC. There was Rico Rodriguez just came around. There was a couple of high rising prospect heavyweights, but he's probably already the most talented. Am I living in the moment? I know I do this. Am I living in the moment?
No, I don't think you're living in the moment on this one. It's heavyweight. He's already 2 wins away from a title shot. 4 wins in the UFC get a heavyweight a title shot, really. So he's already, halfway there. And the thing is, he's looked good. Like he's a physically, nimble and coordinated guy for a dude his size. Don't look at me like that. I'm saying by heavyweight standards. No, I'm just messing with you.
No, I was actually looking up. Like, did James McSweeney win the Ultimate Fighter?
No, James McSweeney was picked first
in lost
the season that Roy Nelson won.
Oh yeah. Why was
it was
Roy
the heavyweight
Nelson?
season?
Yeah, that's because it was.
And
Rampage.
McSweeney's another guy that has split time at 205, and you can argue some of his best performances were at 205.
Yeah. McSweeney was. Yeah, you're right. McSweeney was picked first. That was the same year as Kimbo, and like Quentin Jackson picked Kimbo just because he wanted Kimbo on his team.
Yep.
Like why wasn't Roy Nelson picked first? Like that's because you had two coaches who didn't know who Roy Nelson was.
I have been doing the tough redraft series. Where I go back and take each season and I draft them in the order they should have been drafted in based on how they turned out. Yeah. Roy Nelson was picked 9th. He won the tournament that year by beating the number 1, 2, 3, and 5 picks.
Yeah, and didn't he? We go back to the PFL. You remember he had the battle with Ben Rothwell. IFL. He had the battle with Ben Rothwell, and he was a somebody when he came in.
Either Affliction or Elite XC. He got completely robbed, or we would have beaten Andrei Arlovsky. He got stood up when he had him in side control, cranking up a Kimura.
Yes.
He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. His grappling was by far his best skill at that point. He's got side control. He's got a Kimura locked on, and they stand him up. It was one of the worst robberies I've ever seen.
Only me and you can turn this event into 2 references to the PFL and bring in Affliction. Nice job.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back to Aspinall. I like this guy. I want this guy to be good because I want new blood at heavyweight. I want an English heavyweight. I'd like the English attitudes. They all kind of they always have chip on their shoulder. They have a bad boy. They all kind of they're all Michael Bisping and Darren Till.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm stereotyping, but you get what I'm saying.
Well, you can narrow it down because he's a Team Cowbond guy, and they exemplify kind of that just hooligan demeanor.
Yeah, and I love it.
So
I love it. I love it. I feel like I should have grew up in London, or something. Aspinall, this is what you should do against a guy that you're better than. He just walked him down, walked him right into his punches, threw punches straight down the pipe. I would like a step up in competition for this guy to see if we get too early. Because, he's beaten extremely low-level heavyweights. But I would feel really good if he faced, Andre Arlovsky or, a Chase Sherman. Someone whose has more experience with him. And I think he would do very well.
I agree. I want to see it. There's no sense feeding him guys anymore that are at this level. And also, 2 guys that I know Alan Bodo weighed in over 250, but these guys are both former light heavyweights. Collier used to fight at 185, and showed up a little doughy and at heavyweight. Yeah, there's no sense in making Aspinall fight, borderline UFC material anymore. He needs at least a former top 10 type guy next.
And he's facing guys he's overmatched, but he's doing what you're supposed to do when you have this huge mismatch. So that's what stands out to me. And the last prelim fight, the last main card fight, the first one of the main card, Yusuf Zalal versus Ila Tuporia. If I said that, I think I said that correctly. Tuporia. Yeah. Really, really fun fight. Tuporia picked up a unanimous decision. 2 things really stood out to me in this fight. First is Tuporia is an absolute stud, fun guy to watch in grappling exchanges. Really good in scrambles. I love how he chained his submissions. He knew when he was leaving, he'd go right to a different one. And Zalal was extremely impressive in his ability to get out of subs. I thought, he's about to pass out 10 times in that fight. The second thing that really stood out to me, which is so ironic because I remember the last time we talked about Zalal, we said the complete opposite. Very questionable fight IQ in this fight. which was not what we were saying about Zalal before. This was striker versus grappler, and Zalal needed to move and needed to kick and needed to work his range, and he got taken down and fought off submissions, did everything possible to fight off submissions, and then the second round he comes out wrestling. Like, he said initially in the clinch, and I'm like, dude, you just got 10-8 round with trying to get submissions. We've seen you strike, and you have a lot of ability. Like, not good. Now, he's really young, so I'm not writing off Zalal, but not a good performance. But I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I thought it was a good performance by Topuria, and Zalal took a big step back. What was your thoughts on this fight?
I picked Topuria going into this one, but I fully expected to just be feeling stupid about halfway through the first round when it became obvious that Topuria couldn't get inside on Zalal and was just going to get like pieced up all night at kickboxing range. So, I just was cringing. But no, this is when I made the pick for Topuria. This is what I expected it to look like. My thought was Zalal was getting a little overhyped just based on having jumped into the UFC, won 3 fights in the era of COVID, having just kind of like this really fun, bubbly personality. I mean, before Saturday's fights, I would have put him in the top 5 list of fighters who helped their own brand and their own stock most in 2020. Like there's definitely a couple people ahead of him. Chimaev would be the tops, but he would be in there absolutely.
Yeah,
just by fighting so often, by winning, by just nobody knew who the hell he was a year ago.
That's right.
And all of a sudden he's a thing. But my thought was he's getting a little overhyped, and Topuria is just a bull on the ground. He's so strong. And you said, he chains his submission attempts really well. He threatens with submissions while advancing position. He's a pretty airtight grappler once things are on the ground. And I was betting on, he'll be able to get it to the ground. And I don't know if Zalal just has the muscle to deal with him once it's down there. And that's actually what it looked like. I was surprised that it made it to the end. At the end of the first round, I thought, man, Zalal's going to get tapped out next round. But he had some great escapability.
Yeah. No, that was very impressive. I thought, it's funny, after the first round, I thought the opposite. I thought, like, Topuria just going to, all that squeezing, he's going to be dead tired, and this is where Zalal just kind of plays the matador, picks him apart, and then he started wrestling with him, which made no sense to me at all. But he's only 24 years old, so that's the thing we got to remember. I'm hoping this is one of those early career losses, and he really rebounds. That's the main card. Let's go into the prelims, which is, in a way, as impressive as the main card was. The prelims might have overshadowed. Actually, the prelims did overshadow him. We'll get to in a minute. Topping out the prelims, we had Tom Breeze absolutely blast KB Bueller, first round knockout. Breeze just ran right through him. I'm so happy about this. Not that I have anything against KB Bueller, but Tom Breeze has struggled the last couple of years, some of it with his mental health. Tom Breeze was a guy that we liked. I mean, I shouldn't say we, but the MMA community liked. Like, he was a promising guy, and he was a guy that was well-rounded, could wrestle, had some very technical boxing, and then he's looked terrible. I mean, to go to fight against Brendan Allen, like, as soon as Brendan Allen got on top of him, he looked like he quit. Like, it's nice to see him get back, just bless KB Bueller. And what really stood out to me was afterwards is I have confidence in my training. And I really hope that was not just I have confidence against KB Bueller. I hope that's like a stance overall in his career, and it kind of help him get through some of this mental stuff and kind of go on that journey that we thought he was. And he's a middleweight, so that's the division where you can win a couple fights and be back in the mix. I like Tom Breeze. I'm really happy that he did this. What was your thoughts on this fight?
He looked fantastic. I was happy for him for all the same reasons you were. Anytime an athlete in general or a fighter is open about mental health issues, that always makes me root for them. It's just, if I could speak personally, it's just kind of an unsung killer. So anything that kind of normalizes that, where you can say, hey, I had some things I had to take care of the same way you would talk about bruised ribs. That's good for me. I am a fan of the jab. The jab is a criminally underused weapon in MMA, just, partly because of how MMA striking works, partly because people just don't learn it and don't practice it and don't invest in it. So to see him just floor a man with like a perfect jab that the guy just ran into just made me extremely happy.
Yeah, he looked fantastic. Before that, Chris Daukaus versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Daukaus won by first round knockout. You're laughing. I don't know why.
Daukaus looked great.
Yeah. So Daukaus is a guy that I wasn't really high on. Like his last fight against Parker Porter, I think we're making jokes like, how did these two guys get in the UFC? Now he's 2-0, and then like I got to relook at this guy and be like, he. One thing we talked about his last fight, he trimmed down. He looks more physically fit. I think he trimmed down again. He looked fast. He just ran right through Nascimento, got a knockout. Yeah, I mean, I'm still much higher on like a guy like Tom Aspinall than I am Chris Daukaus, but like I'm intrigued now. Like I want to see him fight again.
So am I. I did not expect that we would be having this conversation about Chris Daukaus, 4 months ago or so. Yeah, I mean, he weighed in for his first UFC fight at 262, his second one at 241, this one at 227.
There you go.
The dude is melting away. I don't think he's light heavyweight material, but he's within shouting distance of it now. Because if he weighed in at 227, that's what he was walking around at that day. There's no reason if you're 240 pounds to suck out 13 pounds of water. He's a 227 pound guy. There are lots of UFC light heavyweights that cut from more than 22 pounds over the limit.
Yeah. I hope he doesn't go down to light heavyweight because he's doing well at heavyweight. And one thing he's been doing is his advantage with his speed. But yeah, I mean, keep it up, man. Things are going well. Good for him. Before that, we had Joaquim Buckley versus Impa Kasanganay. I think we probably skipped this fight because I don't know if anything happened noteworthy to talk about.
Yeah, I kind of turned it off after the first round.
Yeah. Joaquim Buckley won by second round KO. All right. I think I've said it like 10 times, but I am definitely living in the moment of this one. This didn't happen in the main event. This didn't happen over a huge name. So those are some detractors. But in a vacuum, wipe away everything, that goes along with, like, he didn't do a flying knee over Ben Askren. Like, it was Impa Kasanganay. Like we said, it was on a prelim. Like, it wasn't even the main card of a prelim. The main event of the prelim. It was, like, fourth or fifth down. But put it in a vacuum. Take everything away. Purely athleticism. I think this is the greatest knockout in the history of the UFC. Agree or disagree?
I can't agree, but it's in my top 3.
So I've seen people talk about. Okay, so this is what happened, and I'm sure you've seen it, but in case people haven't seen it, Buckley throws. He's southpaw. He throws his left kick. Kasanganay catches it. While he catches it, he does a spinning back kick right in the face of Kasanganay while Kasanganay is still holding onto Buckley's leg, knocks him out cold. The couple of knockouts that stand out is one thing I saw some people talking about the Yaya Rodriguez knockout of the Korean Zombie, and I understand why people have that number one, the reverse elbow, literally the very last second of the fight, 25-minute fight, but all that adds to it. I'm saying strictly from the move, nothing else, just the move. I feel like Yaya Rodriguez's knockout was kind of luck. Like, you kind of get blitzed, you're throwing up things just because you're throwing up things. Like, I don't think he intended to knock him out. Like, I think Buckley was intending to knock him out with this kick. Other ones that kind of stand out for greatest knockouts, you have like Edson Barbosa's, Terry Edom, spin and wheel kick. But like, I feel like when people are throwing out like the spin and wheel kick, like Uriah Hall's knockout on Tough, like Buckley basically did that, but while on one leg. instead of the other fighters. So which ones do you have ranked higher than this one?
I would have Barboza versus Edom.
Really?
As probably still my number one. The thing,
it's a great one.
I can see the argument for this one because this one was a surprise and a shock. It was kind of, it was like Rodriguez versus Jung in that way, where, you had to run it back and be like, what happened there? The first time I saw the Rodriguez Jung fight and saw the knockout, I jumped and screamed on my couch because I thought it had been a clash of heads. I was like, how are they even going to rule this fight?
Sure.
Is it going to be like a technical decision? Or and it wasn't until the replay where I saw that the elbow had come up and just tagged Zombie right on the point of the jaw perfectly. I was like, well, that's one of the greatest knockouts ever.
Of course.
The thing about Barboza versus Edom is there have been plenty of wheel kicks thrown. There have been other wheel kick knockouts. It wasn't the first in UFC history. Somebody could put together a highlight video worldwide now of many of them. But it's just from a physics standpoint, still just one of the most perfect techniques. Yeah. Just the extension, the perfect range. I mean,
the way Edom falls.
But the thing is, even if you cut the video 2/100ths of a second after the heel hits, and you don't know that how Edom goes down, you'd still be like, wow, you could not draw. You could throw 1,000 wheel kicks, and none of them would be more beautiful than that.
Yeah.
So I mean that's my standard, but this one was similarly just fantastic, right on the button, and it had that element of surprise. I still can't believe he did that.
Yeah. So the reason why I put this number one, and like I said, I love to live in the moment. I like to do that a lot. So the Yaya Rodriguez one, I still believe it's luck. I don't believe this was luck. I think this was skill. The Edson Barboza one is really good. The Edson Barboza is also something that you see, at the gym, guys trying against a heavy bag. And if the way Barboza lands it, it's like a guy who, he finds his range on the heavy bag and does it. So that's a really good argument. It is, on a scale of how well placed it was, it's 100 out of 100. I get that. But like you said, we've seen guys do it. I mean, we saw a spinning wheel kick knockout on this card.
Mm-hmm.
We've never seen this. This is why I have this higher. Also, when a guy, the Uriah Hall one, this one, the people throw up, the guys know what they're going to do. They kick in, they punch, and they go, all right, I'm going to spin a wheel kick now. I'm going to do something. I don't think Buckley had this plan. I think he practices this, but I don't think he went let me throw this kick, hope he catches it, then I'm going to jump in the air and spinning back kick him in the face. He just did it on a pure reaction, which to me makes it even more impressive.
I'm with you there.
He needed his partner to catch his kick. And also, we've seen, and I know this doesn't count, but we've seen spinning wheel kicks in karate movies, and we've seen wheel kicks in taekwondo competitions. I mean, Stephen Thompson has some, we see the highlight reels of Stephen Thompson and other guys. I've never seen this in anything. I don't know if this is in a movie. Maybe you could find a friggin' Power Rangers movie with one of the guys does this, or Cobra Kai or something. But in real life, if you told me someone's going to do that, if someone showed me that move of some karate guy doing that in the dojo while he's instructing and said, someone's going to do this in UFC, I'd say, no, it doesn't. That shit doesn't work in real life. So that's why this one is number one to me. But this is the no-brainer, unanimous, 100% unanimous knockout of the year. Nothing's going to top that. If you are there always will be somebody who goes to a SureDog forums or a Facebook or Reddit or something and says, near the end of the year, and they throw out who their fight of the year is. And there's always that one person who wants to be a hipster. If you pick anything else, then this is the knockout of the year. To stop watching MMA. Don't be that guy. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
When we do the shirt, we vote. Don't even Mike Fridley. I don't know if he's gonna listen to this. Mike, don't even throw this one out to vote. Because if we vote, it's insulting the knockout. This is the knockout. Let someone write it up now. For our end of the year award. I'll write it up now. This is our knockout of the year. And if anybody from SureDog votes against this, they should be kicked off the team. All right.
I don't have the power to do that.
And not that I think with Mike, we have fantastic staff that nobody would vote against it. But anything? I mean, should we talk about the rest of the? We talked about one move. Should we talk about the rest of the match, or do you have thoughts on the rest of the match before the knockout?
I mean, I thought he was winning before that. He looked really good. He was getting. He's another of the type of kickboxer that needs a certain amount of room and space to work. He doesn't like being crowded. He doesn't like being pressured, and Kasanganay was not doing those things to him, so he won the first round.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say about this matchup besides the knockout, the only thing that might have been more amazing and impressive than the knockout was Impa Kasanganay's reaction on social media, where he tagged Buckley, congratulated him on the knockout, wished him and his team luck in the future, and you couldn't see a guy who handle a more classy. This is he is going to be a highlight reel. He's going to be in the. Every single time Buckley comes up, this is going to be in it. But Buckley's retired; they're still going to show this move, and he handled it with as much of class as any fighter in history could. So,
yep.
He got knocked out brutally, and I became more of a fan of his.
And both guys will be around for a while. I don't think this makes Impa Kasanganay damaged goods or done for.
No, and Buckley could lose his next 4 fights, and he's still probably going to be in the UFC. Before that, we had Tony Kelly versus Ali Al-Kaisi. Really, really fun fight to me.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth, some really fun scrambles. The only difference to me was Kelly's more well-rounded. Al-Kaisi had to get it down to the ground. He had some submission attempts, almost ended the fight, and wasn't able to put Kelly down. Kelly dug deeper and just kept bringing the fight to him. Really fun. I don't know what else to say, but it was a really fun fight.
Yeah, really fun fight. It is a shame that somebody had to lose, and especially that, well, not especially because they both had lost their debuts, but Ali Al-Kaisi is now 0-2 in the UFC. We'll get to the cut list in a minute, but I'm not going to put him on it. So,
yep, I'll agree. I'm not good either, because that was you have fun fights like that. I'm going to agree with you. Before that, the fight that for the prelims that I was looking most forward to stylistically, Giga Chikadze versus Omar Morales. Morales moving down a weight class did not go well for him, as Chikadze won a unanimous decision pretty soundly. The commentators made this fight sound like it was a lot closer than it was. They kept talking. At one point, they almost sounded like Chikadze was losing, and I'm like, are they watching the fight I win? Chikadze's picking him apart. I did not like Morales' style is pressure, kind of take one and land one. And he was trying to single shot Chikadze, and you could not do that. Chikadze was just way too much technical, too sound. He was doing very well, pulling with his punches, his leg kicks. Really just pillar to post, systematic breakdown of Morales. Really, really impressive by Giga Chikadze.
Nothing to add.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, these last 3 fights are kind of I think it's going to be like that. Before that, Tracy Cortez versus Stephanie Egger. Cortez is a prospect that a lot of people like. I always point out that I think she should have a loss on her record. I thought Erin Blanchfield beat her. But other than that, she looks really good in this fight. This is not one that she's probably got people to be remembered by, but I was impressed by her because Egger took this fight in short notice. Cortez tweeted out that she didn't know much about Egger, didn't have any film on her. And I think that was a bunch of bullshit, because she had the perfect game plan. She answered, she was very well prepared for Egger style. She really watched her hips. She was always one step ahead in the grappling, winning all those scrambles against a girl, Egger, who's a black belt in judo, who I actually like. I think she's good. And Tracy Cortez just out grappled her with ease, and it looked really impressive. Well, what's your thoughts about this fight, and particularly Tracy Cortez moving forward?
This is what Tracy Cortez should do with a late notice opponent who, frankly, she has some advantages over. This is what Tracy Cortez's career is going to look like going forward. She's gonna win a lot of fights just by kind of grinding people out on the ground, out grappling them positionally. She's not a super finisher. I mean, she will finish you if you give her your neck, but yeah, it won't always be the most fan friendly thing to watch. But I think she has a high ceiling at 135.
Yeah, I agree. This was a good performance, and I think someone should keep on. Before that, Bruno Silva took on Tagir Ulanbekov. This fight ruled. This fight was a lot of fun. I think just continue proving how much fun the flyweight division is. The big high output from both guys. Both guys had their moments. Silva got out to an early lead with those brutal leg kicks, and I was so impressed by Ulanbekov's just toughness to will it out. Like, he didn't care about getting kicked. He said he knew what his game plan was. Stepped through the fire, landed, worked his jab, looked his long strikes. He's huge featherweight. Added in some takedowns. Just looks like he looks like a really good fighter to watch as a flyweight. Looks like he has a good future in that division. But yeah, just one of these fights that this is not going to be a fight that people remember, especially with all the things that happen in this card. But this is a fight that if you want to break down technique, there's so much fun in this fight. What's your thoughts on the opening card of the night?
I'll be honest. I told you I can't remember if we had started recording yet, but I ended up having to cover KSW 55 on Saturday, which started at a very inconvenient time for me. So after that card, I went back to sleep, and I did not get up until the third from top card on the UFC fight night. So I went back and rewatched everything else afterwards, and the first three fights on this card, Cortez versus Eggers and this one, I was kind of just, zipping through them with the 15-second skip forward button. This one, I just ran it back and was like, I need to watch this whole thing. That's pretty much all I can say to this one. Like, as tired as I was and as ready to be done watching this card as I was, because I watched it in reverse order. I watched this whole thing. Another example of a guy using the jab. Loved it. Not only just using the jab to not just find the range, but enforce the range. Silva did not like running into that jab. And I think that started to make him less willing and able to throw those kicks that had been so good in the first round. And then also in the second round, Ulanbekov started working off the jab and, throwing a 1-2, coming back with something else on top of the jab. So, yeah, really nice performance by both guys, though.
Yeah, and I think I think you made a good point. I think he was less willing to eat a jab than Ulanbekov was willing to take a calf kick, which is kind of ironic when you think about what hurts more. So, I think Ulanbekov is someone who's going to have a big future. As long as he can continue to make that weight class, he's so big, that might be tough. Also a training partner of Khabib Nurmagomedov, which is always kind of raises your stock a little bit and your interest. That's it, guys. We covered the entire card. Let's do something different. Let's do the grade first.
Okay.
I'm giving it an A+. It did not have the all-out fight of the year candidate war, but I was not bored the entire fight. Even the lowest moment, which was probably the Ben Rothwell, Marcin Tybura, it still kind of became a ugly slugfest. So I'm giving it an A+. I'm thrilled with this.
I will give it an A. A lot of meat, not a whole lot of filler. I learned some things about some fighters, which is always, part of the joy of this for me. And you mentioned the Rothwell versus Tybura fight. By the standards of, the bad heavyweight fight on your average UFC card, that one was a whole lot of fun. There was really no terrible fight on this one. And by the standards of this is the non-top 10 women's fight that is not going to get a finish that most cards, often end up with. I thought Cortez versus Egger was a lot of fun as well. So I'll give this one an A.
Yeah. So we're both really high on it. Let's do the cut list. Guys, if you're unfamiliar with the cut list, this is where both me and Ben have to agree on a fighter that no longer deserves to be in the UFC. We try not to focus too much on the negative, more about there's only so many spots in the UFC. If we say no to somebody else, it opens up an opportunity for prospects coming up. I have one. Do you have any?
I have just one. I've already mentioned that despite having lost twice, I want to see Ali Al-Khazi in the UFC again.
I agree. Who is your one?
Ben Rothwell.
Really?
They're not going to do it.
No?
Because they're not going to do it, but
yeah, I agree.
He's too big a name. Bellator would snatch him up in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Even though he's already fought like everybody. In there. But I mean, the guy has, he's lost 4 of his last 6.
Yeah.
And the 2 wins are the Ovent St. Preux heavyweight experiment and Stefan Struve's testicles.
Yeah.
Like, he's won 2 of his last 6, and it's the fight before that 6-fight run when he choked out Barnett with like the 10-finger guillotine. That was the last time he looked good in the cage.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is 5 years ago. That's 6 years ago in January.
Yeah, but he was on a winning streak, wasn't he? Is that do I remember him winning recently? I know that looked good, but didn't he win recently?
The Barnett fight was the last fight in a 4-fight win streak. He beat Vera, Overeem, Matt Mitrione, and Josh Barnett.
Yeah, that was forever ago. I'm trying to pull up his record. I mean, he was on a 2-fight winning streak before this. I mean, Stefan Struve was very controversial, and then
OSP went right back down to light heavyweight afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm okay with Ben Rothwell getting cut. I'd rather see him retire, but yeah, I'm okay with it. The guy I had was Marcus Perez. The guy's 2-4 in the UFC. He's lost 2 in a row. He's just not good. That's who I would cut. I would cut Marcus Perez.
I'm fine with that. Honestly, yeah, he can go.
All right, so there you go. Have it. Ben Rothwell and Marcus Perez. No argument. We don't argue a lot on the cut list. We kind of agree.
Yeah. Well, except for last week, we're usually pretty merciful on it. Yeah. Last week we had like 5 people. We're like, screw this card. Like, all these people must go.
Let's do the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and Bears is a stock market reference. When things are going good, it's a bull market, so that means people whose stocks are rising. When things are going bad, it's a bear market, meaning things are going down. We'll start with the Bears. I will let you go first. You can pick up to 3 people for this list. This is people whose stock went down. You can do like a 3-2-1, like the 1 being the biggest loser of the night.
Okay. For number 3, I'm gonna go. Ben Rothwell. Just, he's always had, well, not always, but in his UFC career at least, has always had kind of strange game plans, strange, strategies.
A strange personality.
He's kind of an odd dude.
Guy.
And I don't want to go too hard there because he's another person who's been very open about having dealt with, depression and with mental health issues. But just speaking of his fight style and his fight persona, kind of an odd duck. But I don't know whether he would have won, but he didn't fight to his best advantage. And it's the reason I put him on the cut list. I don't want to see his next fight. I don't care about his next fight. And I would much rather whoever he would have fought next in the UFC face a debuting fighter.
Yeah.
That is the definition of stock down to me.
You know what? I could see him facing Aspinall next and getting absolutely blasted.
Yep. So could I. Absolutely.
And like getting hit and like slowly, because he's so slow, like slowly falling over like a tree. Like when a tree gets cut down. All right, who's your number 2?
Number 2, Makwan Amirkhani.
Yeah.
Kind of like Rothwell. I don't know whether he would have won if he had the perfect game plan, but I know that what he tried did not work, and I knew it was not going to work very quickly. I'm mildly surprised that he made it to the final bell. So that's stock down because he's a guy who has kind of jumped up and surprised me by winning a few fights I did not think he was going to. I thought he was a sneaky underdog pick here, but yeah, as soon as he came out and just was comfortable letting Barboza fight his fight, I said, nope, he's not winning this, and he might get knocked out badly. So,
And you're number one.
Number one, undefeated fighters. 5 fighters came into this card undefeated. They went 1-4.
Wow.
4 fighters picked up their first loss on this card. Omar Morales, Impa Kasanganay, and Rodrigo Nascimento. And KB Buller. The only undefeated fighter who won was Ilia Topuria. So, yeah.
That's a good one. I almost went with the Brazilians for this because they did not have a good night except for Edson Barbosa, but I left them off my list. We had one similar list. So my number 3 bull is the one that you had, Makwan Murakami, simply because if you call for a fight when a guy enters the division, you've been calling for a while, like you better win that fight. And he did not. He was calling for Edson Barbosa fight and lost. My number 2, Yusuf Zalal. Like I mentioned, he's only 24 years old, but this looks like a big step back from a guy that was quickly rising, as you mentioned. And my number 1, Marlon Moraes. I mean, he's, like we mentioned, he lost 2 out of his last 3 fights. Could really be 3 in a row. He's got a long. If he wants to hold that title one day, he's got a long road back in a very stacked division. Let's move on to the bulls. These guys who had the best night. I'll go first this time. My number 3, I might get some hate for this, but I don't care. 2 weeks in a row, police officers have gotten wins in the UFC, and that's all I'm going to say. They won 2 in a row, so good for police officers.
Congratulations, police officers. Just for those who might not know, that would be Jermaine Demrandamy last week. Yes. And then this week,
Chris Dacus. Yeah.
There you go.
And I'm a police officer. I don't care. I let people know, so I'm always going to back my boys. Number 2, Corey Sandhagen. I mean, did what he did in the main event. We were talking about him. We're talking about him possibly holding a title one day. He looked absolutely fantastic. And number 1, I'm assuming this is your number 1 too. How can it not be Joaquim Buckley? I mean, to do what he did. We're not talking about it anymore. He's number 1 on my list. Who's your top 3 bulls?
Okay. I won't even duplicate your Sandhagen one. Like I agree with you on that one. I will say, let me give an honorable mention one to Brave CF. For those who might not know, Brave CF is an MMA promotion based in Bahrain, which is, just a small Middle Eastern country, very close to the United Arab Emirates, that has been feeding a lot of fighters to these Fight Island cards just because of the geographical proximity. Those fighters have shown out.
Yeah, great call.
I mean, that is where Khamzat Chimaev came from. That is where Ali Al-Kaizi came from. That is where Ilia Topuria, the only undefeated fighter out of 6 on the card to stay undefeated, came from. So once the world returns to something approaching normal, Brave CF might be one of those promotions that really levels up as, they're able to grab more talent.
That's a great call.
They might be the biggest. Yeah. But yeah, it's got to be Joaquim Buckley. The first time I saw Joaquim Buckley fight, he got completely big brothered by Logan Storley at welterweight.
Yeah.
I remember it because I interviewed Storley before that fight, and we were talking about how he matched up with Buckley. You could not have told me then, and that would be like 2.5 years ago, early 2018, that Joaquim Buckley would be in the UFC at middleweight and author one of the most sensational finishes in history. I certainly hope that Dana White makes good on his promise to give the guy $200,000, because the UFC is going to make a lot more than $200,000 off of him. I mean, Brad Kohler knocked a man out while wearing wrestling shoes, and that thing was still in UFC highlight reels 15 years later when you couldn't wear shoes anymore. The UFC had a different logo. Joaquim Buckley is going to be part of the lore of this sport now.
Absolutely.
For as long as we have a sport.
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy should get residuals from it.
That's right.
He should just get like a couple bucks every time somebody watches a UFC highlight reel from now on. It is the definition of having raised your stock.
Yeah.
And there you go. I mean, they're my bulls. And seriously, I could have named 5 more.
Yeah.
Like, Aspinall, Topuria, Sandhagen, a lot of people came out really good from this card.
Yeah. That man, you made so many great points. Like, I know we keep talking about him. That's why he's the no-brainer pick. you mentioned Logan Storley. Like, think about what Buckley is right now, and Logan Storley is still like on the Bellator prelims, you know. And I'd probably still take Storley to beat him. But
I think Storley's one of the most underrated fighters in the world.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I mean, he's boring, but yeah. I love the Brad Kohler, because when I was saying to a guy today, I said the same thing. Like, he could lose. Like, I don't know where Buckley goes, but he could lose his next 5 fights, 6 fights, 7 fights, and be out of the UFC. But he will always have a spot in the UFC highlights. He'll be on that Bob O'Reilly, the Who video they play, and all these things. And it's funny because Brad Kohler, if you know, it's like one of the meanest punches you've ever seen, where he like almost pulls his whole body back and just hits a guy, and the guy falls face plants right in front of him. And that happened 20 years ago. And you said Brad Kohler. You never said the knockout, and instantly I knew what knockout was. I'll give you a couple other examples of guys. I'm just going to say their name, and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Mark Ware.
Mm-hmm.
Eve Edwards.
Yep.
Shoney Carter. Like, those are just 3 off the top of my head, which, if you've been around, you know exactly which thing I'm talking about. And I just said the name. 20 years from now, we're going to say Joaquim Buckley, and we're going to think of this moment.
Yep.
So he is our winner. I think that's the best way to end it. Joaquim Buckley, the winner of the night. Guys, we'll be back next week. We have a really intriguing card, especially in the main event. We have Brian Ortega returning after what seems forever, taking on the Korean Zombie Chansung Jung. Ben, tell people what you're working on this week and where to follow you on social media.
Well, you can find me on social media at Benjamin Duffy, and you can find me at SureDog.com, just in the little features drop-down menu. My name is there. You'll just find a lot of historic and memory lane type pieces. That's, kind of what I specialize in. I am not a forward-looking writer. I am a backwards-looking writer. But I'm happy to talk about the next week's fights anytime.
And guys, I'm actually be doing a live event, my first one during this COVID era. I will be at Bellator this weekend. I'm only there for one day because of their rules with the social distancing, so I'm not going to be able to do as much coverage as they expect, as we usually get on Fight Week. But hopefully I can get some good content, and you'll see it on the SureDog YouTube page if I can get any interviews and stuff. Guys, we'll be back next week. See you then.